When I came into this class and was told that I would have to figure out what discourse community I was a part of to do research on, I was pretty confused and I couldn't really think of anything for a while, and then I started realizing more and more just how many different communities I was involved in, whether I actually knew it or not, and one of these was the Catholic Church. And since the beginning of the Catholic Church, women have not been allowed to be ordained as priests, and I've always wondered about this, but it was never really something that I put too much thought into. And now that I've had this opportunity to look into it, I've realized just how big of an issue it actually is in the church, and just how many people are upset about it. A lot of the church's reasoning for not allowing women to be priests is that since God was man and all of his apostles were men, only men should be allowed to be priests because that's the way he made it. But a lot of people argue that he never actually said women couldn't be priests. It was just kind of like the social norm at the time for only men to have positions of any power, so that's just the way it was. And a lot of people believe that if he had only wanted men to be priests, he would have explicitly said that. And a lot of nuns are very upset with the way this is because, they have somewhat positions of power in the church, but not really like a lot of authority in the government of the church. And this is really upsetting for them because they have all these gifts and they have all these talents that they really aren't allowed to use the same way men can just because of their gender. And a lot of people wonder why the church is even concerned about gender if it's supposed to be for your spirit. And does God even really have a gender? So why is it that only one gender is allowed to do certain things in the church? The church says that part of the reason that only men can be priests is that the church itself is supposed to be the bridegroom of Christ, and it wouldn't make sense if priests were women, because then it would be like women marrying the bridegroom, which they believe doesn't really make sense. But at the same time, that's more metaphorical than it actually is a literal thing, so this just doesn't seem like a very good excuse for only allowing men to be priests. The Pope, when he was questioned about it, pretty much just dismissed the topic and said that it wasn't really open for discussion at all, and it was just the way things were. And this is upsetting to a lot of women because it's like he doesn't even give them the time of day to discuss the topic and to try to figure out any sort of compromise. He just, basically with the Catholic Church, it's always been that way, so they believe that that's just the way it is. But still, women are trying their best to change this. There are a lot of protests and movements to try to change the fact that women can't be priests. There are some type of like underground masses taking place where women will meet together and have their own masses privately so nobody knows about it, because if the church found out about it, they would risk being excommunicated from the church, because that's the penalty for going against the Catholic Church's rulings, is excommunication, which means that they would just entirely be taken out of the Catholic Church. Nevertheless, people do meet and they do have their own services, and there have been women priests ordained. A lot of people believe that the Catholic Church will not change its standpoint unless women just start becoming priests and asserting themselves in the church, because unless it's a real threat to the Catholic Church, then they really have no reason to change. So for now, things stay the same, but hopefully in the future, the more women continue to fight against this and have their own services and demand to be noticed and demand for this problem to be taken seriously, then maybe eventually women will be allowed to be priests in the Catholic Church.